Ever had a biker buddy swear his loud pipes are keeping him alive? Or that laying his bike down is the smart move? Yeah, time to leave the Hollywood myths behind and get real. There's a lot of biker wisdom floating around, and honestly, some of it is pure bullshit. We're going to ditch the biker stereotypes and get down to the nuts and bolts, the actual technical truth behind 12 common motorcycle myths. Ready to separate fact from fiction? Let's ride. Let's kick things off with a classic, the loud pipes save lives mantra. The idea is that a booming exhaust makes you super noticeable to every car on the road. Sounds good, right? Not quite. Here's the problem: sound direction. Most of your exhaust noise is blasting backward. Cars in front of you, the ones you're most worried about, are far less likely to hear it than the folks you've already passed. Think of it like a megaphone. It's loudest in the direction it's pointing. Exhaust systems are primarily designed for engine performance, not for acting as a superpowered horn. The sound waves primarily travel in the direction of the exhaust outlet. While a louder exhaust might increase your overall sound footprint slightly, it's not a reliable safety device. A much safer way is to ride defensively, positioning yourself in the lane where drivers can see you, and wearing bright, visible gear are way more effective. From the roar of pipes, let's shift our focus to something a bit quieter: your helmet. This myth claims that helmets are like putting blinders on a horse, blocking your vision and muffling important sounds. Thankfully, that's completely backwards. Modern helmets are designed with a huge field of view. Safety standards require at least a 210-degree horizontal field of vision. That's more than enough to see what's happening around you. As for hearing, helmets actually reduce wind noise. That rushing wind sound can be deafening at speed. A good helmet cuts down on that roar, making it easier to hear important sounds like sirens, horns, and approaching vehicles. The helmet's padding and shell act as a barrier to the chaotic wind noise, allowing you to better perceive crucial auditory cues. Now that we've cleared up the helmet issue, let's talk about what not to do in an emergency. This myth is dangerous. The idea is that if you're about to crash, you should intentionally drop your bike to slide out of harm's way. This might look cool in action movies, but it's a terrible idea in real life. When you lay it down, you lose all control. You can't steer, you can't brake, and you're basically a very vulnerable object sliding on the pavement. Staying upright gives you options. You can use your brakes, you can swerve, and you can potentially ride out of a dangerous situation. Motorcycle braking systems are designed for maximum stopping power while upright. Modern bikes often have advanced features like linked brakes, where applying one brake lever partially activates the other, and ABS, anti-lock braking system, which prevents wheel lockup and allows you to maintain steering control even during hard braking. Laying the bike down eliminates all of these advantages. Speaking of control, let's talk about bike size and speed. This one seems logical. A bigger engine must mean more speed, right? Not always. It's all about the power-to-weight ratio. Think of it this way: a small, lightweight sport bike with a 600cc engine might have a much better power-to-weight ratio than a huge, heavy cruiser with a 1200cc engine. The lighter bike can accelerate much faster, even with a smaller engine. A 600cc sport bike typically weighs around 400 to 450 pounds and produces 100 to 120 horsepower. A 1200cc cruiser can weigh 600 to 800 pounds and produce a similar or even lower horsepower figure. The sport bike's superior power-to-weight ratio gives it a significant advantage in acceleration. So, size isn't everything. And speaking of not everything, let's talk about gear. This myth is pure ego. Some experienced riders think they're so skilled that they don't need protective gear. That's like saying, "I'm such a good driver, I don't need a seatbelt." Accidents happen. Even the best riders can't control other drivers, road conditions, or sudden surprises. Proper gear, a good jacket, gloves, boots, and pants is your armor. It protects you from road rash, impacts, and the elements. Motorcycle gear is constructed from abrasion-resistant materials like leather or specialized textiles, e.g., Cordura, Kevlar. Many jackets and pants also incorporate armor padding at critical impact zones like elbows, shoulders, knees, and hips. This armor helps to dissipate impact forces and reduce the severity of injuries. From gear, let's move on to tires, specifically racing tires. This one sounds tempting. If racing tires are good enough for the track, they must be awesome on the road, right? Wrong. Racing tires are designed for a very specific purpose: maximum grip at very high temperatures. They're made of a super soft rubber compound that gets sticky when it's hot. The problem is, on normal roads, you're rarely going to reach those extreme temperatures. Street tires are designed for a much wider range of conditions. They work well when they're cold, they handle wet roads better, and they last a lot longer. Using racing tires on the street can actually be less safe because they might not grip as well as you expect. Racing tires use a very soft compound with minimal tread pattern to maximize contact with the track surface. Street tires have a harder compound and a more pronounced tread pattern to provide grip in a variety of conditions, including wet pavement. Curiosity loop. If weight isn't everything in terms of speed, does that mean a lighter rider will always be faster? Is there any truth to that idea, or is it another misconception? The answer is, it's complicated. Sure, less weight helps. But did you know a heavier rider often corners better? Yeah, it's all about body control, and we'll get into that in a second. This one makes sense on the surface. Less weight means faster acceleration. But motorcycling is about much more than just going fast in a straight line. A heavier but skilled rider can often outperform a lighter, less experienced rider. Handling, braking, throttle control, and knowing how to use your body weight to control the bike, those skills are far more crucial than just being skinny. A skilled rider knows how to use their weight to their advantage, shifting their body position to improve cornering stability and control. A less experienced rider, regardless of weight, might struggle with these techniques. From rider weight, let's move on to a very common and dangerous braking myth. This myth is surprisingly common, and it's caused a lot of unnecessary crashes. Many riders are terrified of using their front brake, thinking it'll send them flying over the handlebars. The truth is, your front brake provides the majority of your stopping power, about 70 to 90%. If you only use the rear brake, you're dramatically increasing your stopping distance, which is super dangerous. Unless you grab the front brake with all of your force at a high speed, your bike isn't going to flip over. Modern motorcycles are designed to handle hard front braking. Many even have ABS, which prevents the front wheel from locking up, even if you brake too hard. Now, let's talk about another thing you shouldn't do for too long: warming up your bike. This is an old habit that's stuck around, but it's mostly unnecessary for modern bikes. Older motorcycles with carburetors often needed a long warm-up to run smoothly. But today's bikes mostly use fuel injection. Fuel injection systems have sensors that automatically adjust the fuel-air mixture, even when the engine is cold. You only need to let your bike idle for 30 to 60 seconds, just to get the oil circulating. Letting it sit for 10 minutes or more just wastes fuel and can even cause carbon buildup in the engine. The Engine Control Unit, ECU, in a fuel-injected motorcycle receives data from various sensors, including the coolant temperature sensor and the oxygen sensor, to determine the optimal fuel-air mixture. This allows the engine to run smoothly even when cold, eliminating the need for a prolonged warm-up period. From warm-up times, let's talk about overall costs. This one can be true, but it's not a guarantee. Sure, the initial price of a motorcycle is often lower than a car, but the costs can add up. Good quality gear is essential, and it's not cheap. Maintenance can be more frequent than on a car. And if you buy a high-performance bike, insurance and tires can be surprisingly expensive. Some high-end motorcycles can easily cost more to own and operate than a basic, fuel-efficient car. From overall cost, let's talk about how you ride, and a common misconception about leaning. This is a fear many new riders have, but it's mostly unfounded. Motorcycles are designed to lean. Leaning is how you steer a bike through turns. It's not the leaning itself that's dangerous. What is dangerous is poor technique, like chopping the throttle mid-corner, grabbing the brakes suddenly, or hitting a patch of gravel or oil. Leaning is how you turn on your bike, not something you should be scared about. The physics of cornering on a motorcycle involve a balance of forces, including gravity, centrifugal force, and the friction between the tires and the road. Leaning the bike allows the rider to counteract the centrifugal force and maintain balance. Here's the twist. Riding isn't about ego or myths. It's about respect. Respect for your machine, the road, and yourself. When you ride with knowledge instead of old biker tales, you don't just ride safer, you ride better. It's not about conforming to some outdated image or proving something to anyone. It's about the connection between rider and machine, the connection to the road, and the connection to the environment around you. Understanding the real physics of your bike, the real limitations of your gear, and the real risks involved actually deepens that connection. It makes you a more present, more aware, and ultimately, a more fulfilled rider. It's not about fear, it's about respect. Respect for the machine, respect for the road, and respect for yourself. When you strip away the myths, you're left with the pure, unadulterated joy of riding, informed by knowledge, not by folklore. This is the classic biker stereotype, the tough, leather-clad rebel who lives outside the law. Thanks to Hollywood, a lot of people still believe this. The reality is, most motorcycle riders are just regular people. They're doctors, teachers, engineers, your neighbors, people from all walks of life who enjoy riding. It's a hobby, a way to commute, or just a fun way to spend a weekend. Sure, there are motorcycle clubs, but most of them are just groups of friends who like to ride together. That's 12 motorcycle myths you can leave in the dust. We've ditched the stereotypes and looked at the real technical reasons behind why these common beliefs are wrong. Remember, safe riding is about knowledge, skill, and good judgment, not about following outdated advice or trying to look cool. Ride safe and keep the rubber side down. Got another myth that drives you crazy? Drop it in the comments. We might feature it next time. Like this kind of straight-talking, no-nonsense bike content? Smash that like button, subscribe, and join the crew. Until next time, keep the shiny side up and the rubber side down.